The UltraBROKER is normally an endpoint device in the HL7 workflow, as most brokers are. The broker receives HL7 from an interface engine or from a RIS or an HIS and interprets that information, puts it in a database, and that is then queried by a modality using DICOM. However, some customers over time have started using our broker as an interface engine, either because they didn't have an interface engine currently or it was more cost effective than implementing an interface engine, since we would be handling that HL7 traffic anyway. And certainly we've seen this even outside the radiology market. So this is what the UltraBROKER looks like. And if you wanted to set up routing, so if you want to be able to receive HL7 on the broker and then route it to other nodes on the network, you can go into configuration routing, and you would have a list of, these are perhaps your incoming devices, so devices that send to the broker. So for example, I might say when I receive from Cerner on port 9002, I could set up a routing rule. So first I would add the message type that I want to route. So let's say I want to route ORM messages. So all ORMs coming from Cerner, and then I could filter them. So I could say, as an example here, I'll click filter message, and I'll add a filter that says the MSH, which is the message header, and then we'll say field receiving application, component 1 has to have a value of there. So we know it has to be sent over there. So now if that value is there, so there's my filter. I can also modify. As it's routing these ORM messages, so the ORM comes in from Cerner, it's identified as an ORM, it checks the segment to make sure that it has a certain value. And by the way, you can list multiples here, so it'll do AND logic. So you can list multiple fields that you want to, and it doesn't have to be the same field. It could be all different segments, fields, what have you, and even subcomponents. And then I can modify. So if I click modify on out, let's say this device downstream is persnickety about the patient identification. So maybe they're looking for the patient ID to be in field 4, but it's sent by Cerner, let's say, in field 3. So I would go to the PID segment, and I would say I want to put in field 4 the value that came from Cerner in field 3. So now it would always map whatever's in field 3 into field 4. And you could also just put a static value. So you could just pick a field and type in whatever you wanted to always put into that field, so it could be static. And then finally, so once we know what type of message, when to do it, and what to modify, and by the way, there's modifications. You can list many modifications there. It doesn't have to be just one. So you can have lots and lots of different fields being moved around inside the message or being statically set inside the message. And then finally, you would put a destination. So for example, maybe I'm going to forward all these messages to port 8006. And that's it. And then I've got some basic routing set up. And I think, I think we support up to 32 different rules in this interface. So you would just keep adding additional rules if you wanted to add more routing rules. We have more complicated routing and more complicated, so if you need and or logic for the filtering and the modification, or you need to do dynamic modification, we have other tools that can do that. But this is our basic routing tool, which is included with all UltraBROKERs.